Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 75 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is Sam Jarman. Sam is a software developer who lives in Wellington, New Zealand. He started his software development journey with C and later Objective-C, creating apps for iOS. Sam is also a keen blogger and writes a blog series called Junior Dev Diaries, where he talks about what he's learned in the first few years of his career. In addition to blogging, Sam is an improv actor, public speaker, writer, and future thinker. So Sam, can I ask you to expand on that brief summary and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi Phil, great to be here, thank you. The blog series is called Junior Dev Diaries, and it sort of documents / captures some of the lessons I've had to learn, maybe not the easiest way possible in the first few years of my career, and hoping that I can avoid others that pain by writing it up. As for the iOS stuff, I've been doing iOS apps since I was in high school. I had about 10 to 15 before I left high school on the App Store going into university, and I sort of dabbled since. And about 7 months ago, I joined BNZ Bank here in New Zealand to work with their iOS team on their iOS app. So that's been pretty fun as well, going back to iOS full time. On the improv side, I do improv shows here in Wellington almost every weekend in one form or another. It's quite a good hobby. It's quite different to coding, of course. But just like coding, there's a fair bit of making it up as you go along, which is a good skill to have in life, I think.
Sure. I think I saw you compare it to, I think the show, what was it called? Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
Yes. So is it comedy based or is it more serious than that?
It ends up being funny, whether or not we intend it or not.
Right.
We usually try to be funny though. Yeah. We do a show called Attack of the Killer B Movie. So B movies are obviously this 1950s genre of, you had the double feature and you had your A feature and you had your B movie, and they have poor props and bad acting and a plot that doesn't make sense. So we just ask the audience for titles. So Revenge of the Something or The Night of the Something, The Day of the Something Struck Back. And we just go from there. And we have a suitcase full of props and costumes, and we deliver on the bad plot and the terrible acting and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a laugh.
Sounds great fun.
Yeah, it's great fun.
Yeah. Okay. So Sam, can you maybe tell us or share with us a unique career tip that the IT Career Energizer audience need to know and probably don't?
I think my biggest tip is about programming, like software development. I think my biggest tip would be your code and your comments and your commit messages is not for you now, but it's for your team later, or even yourself later. So that's to say that whilst your code might make sense to you now, or you know what you were doing at the time, essentially no one will ever know more about that code that you've written than you. So when it comes time to open up a pull request or even merge the code in later on, the code better be perfectly understandable and expressed in a really clear and concise way. It doesn't have to be bug-free, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be perfectly understandable, such that when someone comes back to it later, they don't struggle with it. They don't struggle to see what you were trying to do. That's probably my biggest tip, and why I say that is because it makes you think in a very different way as you program. It makes you think about code structure, code quality, the separation of concerns, how testable it is. Have you even written tests? And that sort of stuff improves the quality of your code and improves the asset that you're essentially adding to in the business environment.
Yep, absolutely right. Okay, Sam, can you maybe tell us the story of your worst IT career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Yep. Obviously, pretty embarrassing to talk about. So I was at a startup previous to my current employer, and like all startups, they're full of stress and pressure and uncertainty. And I, by and large, do love that. But I had been overseas for the company, which I absolutely loved. But I came back a little bit disillusioned with the potential future for the company. And that combined with what I'm almost certain was burnout, I got back to my teammates and I was definitely pretty negative in a meeting. And we just had a new engineering manager start, and he was trying to implement Scrum, which is a fine system, but wasn't what we needed at the time, I don't think. So I got pretty defensive, and my tone was incredibly negative, and I did make some personal attacks towards this new hire, and I feel very embarrassed about it now, but I think it taught me a very powerful lesson in terms of how do I, one, control my emotions in work and life, but also how do I actually just go into something with an open mind? How do I stay positive about things even though I'm not convinced? The whole team was sort of open and ready to try it, but for some reason I wasn't. And that's something that I actually encourage others now, is like, essentially in software is a team sport for most people, and IT is in general. And so decisions are made as a team. And so if you're against the team for some reason, either the team doesn't know something you do, or you don't know something the team does. And generally we let ideas win on merit, but usually it takes a while to communicate effectively what that idea is and the implications of it. So my learning from that, and after chatting with my managers about the incident and this kind of low point in my career, I sort of did more reading and did more thinking, and now I'm really into the idea of team-based decisions and buy-in and making sure everyone's on the same page before doing something. And also just accepting the fact that, you might disagree with the team, but at the end of the day, the team has decided to go this way, so get on board,
Yes.
There's always the door if you don't love it, or if you find yourself losing too many arguments, that's just simply not a good fit, and that's fine. You're able to be like, that's okay, I'm going to move on. But it's just like this idea of what the team wants, and being able to pitch an idea to the team and trying to get the team behind that idea is really important. So that's where I sort of failed at. Hugely embarrassing, but really monumental learning point for me, and I'm so glad it happened. Obviously, I feel really sorry for my colleagues and that gentleman at the time, but we got past that, and I definitely had mended those bridges, I should say, and I left that job on a really good note, which I'm pretty proud of.
Cool. Okay, so it sounds like you've managed to sort of change the way you approach things in terms of being more open-minded and maybe more collaborative.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to sort of, as a junior, I guess, to try to like make your mark on the world, to try to make your stamp. You're dying to be able to come in and fix the things and have an opinion that sort of changes everyone's mind. But really, it takes a long time to be able to get into the privilege of that position. It takes 3 to 4 years to be able to say something with confidence and with wisdom behind it. So I'm definitely kind of all ears with ideas these days, and the rare times I can actually use my experience to sort of add to a decision process or add to an argument, I really like those times. But usually I stay in my lane and I try to keep quiet. But I think my colleagues would say I'd often fail at that, but I'm working on it.
I think it's to do with constructive input as well. I think if it's benefit, you can have an opinion. There's no problem with doing that. But as long as it's constructive and not negative, I think that's the difference.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from your worst IT career experience, maybe you can tell us about your IT career highlight or greatest success so far?
Yeah, so I've had a really great career so far. It's only been about 3.5 years, but I've had a really fun time. So the first kind of 3 years, I was at a startup. We were based in New Zealand with a little satellite office, kind of / head office in New York. And we got acquired later on by a New York-based company about 20 months into me working there. And I worked at that acquirer for another 18 months or so after that. What this meant was I got to travel to New York twice, which was very exciting. It was the second and third time I've ever been to the United States. It was, as someone who lives in New Zealand, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK, we obviously have a lot of American influence in the country, movies, TV shows, that sort of stuff. And so to actually go to the country and see the silly $1 paper notes and all that sort of stuff, and to tip and all that sort of funny stuff was really quite an exciting time. So it was cool to see the money and all the flags and the Statue of Liberty and the Brooklyn Bridge and check out the subway and Central Park, Grand Central Station, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
It was also really fun, going back to what I was saying earlier about trying to have a bit of influence as a junior, was walking onto our client sites and sort of helping their developers through integrating with our software, being sort of the domain expert in the area. And actually, what I found really fun was actually pairing with their developers on writing the code, solving the problems, and that sort of stuff. So that was a real fun time. But if I'm more honest about my career highlights so far, recently I was named New Zealand's Young IT Professional of the Year by the Institute of IT Professionals in New Zealand. So that was a massive thing, and I was super honoured to receive that award. So that was an awesome evening, big fancy dinner and black tie and stuff. But that was sort of in recognition of all this blogging I'd done and a lot of the work I'd done at that startup, with some glowing references from my previous employer and a few other people in the community. So that was really cool. I do put a lot of effort into my blog and the series I work on, sort of like every sort of Sunday and most evenings in a weeknight. I'm quite privileged to be quite time rich in my evenings at the moment. So I really enjoy doing that, but it's just really cool to get that recognition. So far it's been a pretty good career. A bumpy road at the start, and it's smoothing out now. But I think that those bumps and those feedback, I think feedback is career food, and I absolutely love it. And when people have no feedback from me, I get almost a little bit upset. I'm like, oh, are you sure there's nothing I can do better? Like, I'm sure there's always something to work on. I really love it when people
there always
think
is.
hard
It
about
doesn't matter how long you work in the industry. There's always something new to learn. Definitely.
Yeah, and the stuff that comes up, like you change your work style or things happen in your life, and then you start changing the way you work, and you don't know you're doing it, and someone has to call you out on it.
Yeah,
and that's fine. So new things will come up all the time. So I don't think it's not like riding a bike. I think it's more like keeping fit.
Yes.
You don't just run every day for 6 months and then you're fit the rest of your life. I think you have to keep working on it. And I love that. I love that process. I'm in love with that process, really.
So what in particular excites you about the future of the IT industry and careers in IT?
The most exciting thing is there's just so many people entering the industry. And, like the reason for this podcast and my series, Developer Chats, which is a written interview series, I think there's a lot to be taught to new developers and a lot that we can almost learn from new developers as well, or anyone in the IT profession. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, exciting opportunities in technical leadership, management, and really good management. Technical management has always historically had a bit of a bad rap, because usually it's the best developer then gets told to go be the manager, and those two skill sets do not line up.
Yes, yeah.
To say the least. Yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So I think there's going to be a good field for people like myself who are really interested in technical leadership to start working on those skills sort of nowish. So in 5 to 10 years' time, there will be this big sort of boom below my generation, and these people will need leadership, wisdom, and guidance and vision to sort of execute on some stuff or whatever they're trying to do, which is pretty exciting. I'm also pretty excited on the technology itself. I think artificial intelligence we're really just scratching the surface of that at the moment. I think spam filters and all that are quite cool, but I think it's going to have some hugely profound impacts in the way we think about software and the way the general public sort of thinks about software. So that's pretty exciting. But I'm also pretty excited for just an API-driven world. The idea that any company should be able to exchange information that it has with any other company. So companies can ingest data, enrich it, then pass it on, and data will just flow around the world and things will be connected. And then you can start to really see where we're going to get these sci-fi cities of the future where, you ask Siri for something and Siri goes off to many different services and figures it out for you. And then later the assistant comes back and tells you it's ready or something like that. And it's like a science fiction movie. And I think we're absolutely going to get there. So I'm pretty passionate about APIs and developer experience. And once again, it's about writing good documentation, good code, because APIs are not for you now, they're for your customers later. And so all that sort of stuff kind of ties in. It's about empathy for your user, empathy for other developers using your stuff, which is pretty exciting. So I think the IT field is going to be hugely interesting. IT is not going away, it's growing. We've barely started this industry. We're very new as an industry, and it's only going to grow faster and faster and faster. It's certainly not going to grow linearly.
Yeah.
It's going to grow exponentially, and that's really exciting. But we've got a lot of work as people in the industry to do, supporting new talent, making sure that people from underrepresented groups are getting into the industry, because diversity of thought is so incredibly important. Making sure that people feel comfortable once they're in the industry, making sure people feel supported, making sure people grow, making sure people are paid well and fairly and equally. So lots of fun, interesting problems to solve, and I'm super excited to be part of it, really.
Good. Okay. We're going to move into the reveal round now. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. So what first attracted you to a career in IT?
So I was in year 9, which is I was 13, 14 at high school.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And the class, I was in a history class, and they said you can make a poster about, I can't remember what it was about. I think it was like World War II or some aspect of it. Or you can make a website using Apple's iWeb. And I was like, I'm going to make a website. That sounds way better. So I started making a website with this iWeb program, which was probably like, it's kind of like what Webflow is now, but so old and so first stage, non-responsive, just a brilliant sort of like drag and drop website creation. So I started that, and then I was like, cool, I need background music playing. I want to like change the fonts, and then I couldn't do it with iWeb. So I sat down with the IT support person, and he knew HTML. And so I sat with him and peer programmed and figured out some of this cool stuff. And then I was like, oh, there's actually code behind this drag and drop tool. And that got me interested in the idea of like, I'm communicating with a computer in a language that it understands and I don't that well. So that was really exciting. That's sort of where the bug first hit me. And then I kind of went back to it later on. I was like, right, I want to start learning programming properly. And I asked the IT guy, where do I start? And he's like, well, I started with C. I was like, well, I'll start with C too. And starting with C is never a good idea. It's very difficult for an entry point. But I was so full of passion that I sort of got quite far. And then in my final years of high school, a different IT support person organised a night class for iOS programming. And we had someone in Christchurch in New Zealand having their own app agency. And this was about 2009. So he came in and taught a few classes, just a few like how do you link up a button on the screen and a few like relatively beginner/simple things. And I was just hooked. I just got bitten by the bug. And this was during the App Store Gold Rush days. And it was fair to say I was pretty interested in making a lot of money, but also I really liked the programming. And when the money didn't come through, the love for programming stayed. So that's a good effect. I'm glad I didn't wander off. So yeah, a couple of these key moments where I was like, oh yes, this is for me. And then telling my parents I didn't want to do med school was the interesting conversation.
Yes,
but they're okay with it. I think I've done right.
So what is the best career advice you've ever received?
I think it would be their empathy piece for other developers, empathy for the team. Empathy is something that, if I'm perfectly honest, doesn't come naturally to me. It's not something I've ever actively worked on until the last couple of years. And whilst I think I'm a nice person and I have feelings and I'm not like a robot, putting myself in someone else's shoes is a lot of cognitive effort for a lot of people, including myself. And so working on that to see like, oh, I wonder how that person's feeling. I wonder what that person wants or what does that person need out of the situation is something that I think a lot of people should work more on.
Yeah, agreed. If you were to begin your IT career again right now, what would you do?
I would start with Python from scratch. Python is a very nice beginner language, or Ruby or JavaScript. And then I'd probably do more website-y, front-endy stuff. I think that's a really good way to get fast feedback on what you're doing. I think I got it essentially from iPhone programming, but I probably did it the hard way. But I think in those early days, it's really important to write some lines of code, refresh the screen and the thing to be different, and you get that instant feedback of like, oh, I'm actually putting an image on the screen or some text on the screen, or I'm centering something or I'm bolding something. So that's probably the technology approach I would take. I would try to lure myself in with something quite visual quite quickly. And as for that, I think it would pretty much be the same way. I think starting in IT is like being in a dark room. You kind of just start to bump into things and then eventually you kind of figure out what's in the room. People like us like to try to turn on the lights for people, but I think some bumps and knocks are definitely good for you along the way.
Yeah. What career objectives are you currently focusing on?
So I'm hoping to transition into sort of what someone would call a senior developer over the next few years. So there's no one standard for being a senior developer. It's not like a chartered accountant or anything like that. No one sort of internationally agreed on what a senior developer is or a senior anything. But what I think it is just a breadth of wisdom based on experience. So I think it just takes time. I think trying to call yourself a senior developer before sort of 7 to 10 years experience, you might be trying to cheat the term a little bit. So that idea of being the bigger person in the room, taking the high road, which as discussing earlier, I have not done in past sometimes. That's sort of where I'm trying to get to, being very helpful, helping other people and helping the people around me move faster and being more efficient, and sort of adding value to the company I work for in that sense. And I think that's sort of a good prerequisite for leadership, where I want to head to eventually. But I think that stage for me is like, how do I be a better developer? How do I work better with other people? And then how do I help my fellow developers move faster and succeed more? And that is a simple statement to make, but very complex in implementation.
Yep. There's plenty to do, definitely. Yeah.
Plenty to do there, yeah.
What's the number one non-technical skill that's helped you in your career so far?
We're talking about empathy before. Definitely that. If I would add one more, it would be self-awareness. I think thinking about who you are, what you want to be, what you want to do, what you're here to do in the world is incredibly important. Knowing where you're at, being honest with yourself is incredibly important. Because once you have self-awareness, and it takes a few years to develop actively, when you actively work on it, things get a lot more obvious and things get simpler. You sort of see stuff happen and you're just like, that happens. Like, for example, miscommunication happens a fair amount, and it happens because humans are fallible. And so when you see miscommunication happens, you can go, okay, that was a miscommunication, and like you just don't get upset about it. So you sort of have that perspective. And perspective is probably the second one to work on a lot. It's like, we're in Western countries, we're both men, we both work in IT, we have hit the jackpot. We are not 7 billionth in the world, so we've got life pretty good. So having that sort of perspective when you approach problems is like, okay, there was a miscommunication, or this group of people weren't engaged early enough in a process, or they weren't heard out enough. That stuff, it sucks at the time, but it's really just fine, and it happens, and it will continue to happen. So that sort of perspective and self-awareness will really help you sort of understand yourself, and then also start to help others and help them on that journey to self-awareness and sort of figuring out where they want to go and how you can help them get there.
So Sam, can you maybe share a parting piece of career advice with the audience?
None of the code or languages or tools or technologies you write really matter. They'll always be changing. Some will go away and some new ones will pop up. I think what's really important is that you learn how to learn. You don't have to know everything, but you have to know how to know anything. And I think that's really key. And I'll say it again. You don't have to know everything, but you have to know how to know anything. And that'll help you kind of approach a new piece of technology and spot the patterns in it that are similar to what you already know, or spot things that you need to go figure out. I think reducing your unknown unknowns, if you've heard that term before, is incredibly important.
Yes.
The more unknown unknowns you have, essentially the worse technologist you'll be. You don't have to know how it works, you just learn that you don't know it. So when you think you're running up against that problem or against that space, you can start reading into it and learning more about it. The second thing is focus on your soft skills, which I like to call core skills, because they're just so core. I think soft implies secondary, and they're absolutely not. They're very much primary skills. I think focusing on your soft skills are really important, and especially for developers, if I'm going to make a sweeping generalization, we're not great at them, but it's a team sport, so all the same team stuff applies. You can read interviews from basketball players or rugby players or cricket players, and they all have this sort of same team mentality, and the stuff that they say is really, really interesting for software development.
Yep.
You'll be surprised how much sporting wisdom applies to software, which you would think that would not be the case. But once you're in the team and on the front line with everyone else, a lot of that stuff comes in really handy.
And Sam, finally, what's the best way we can find out more about you and connect with you?
Cool. So I'm on Twitter at Sam Jarman, so SamJarman, and I'm also at samjarman.co.nz. And from there, you'll be able to go to whatever place you like to go and probably find me on there as well.
Sam, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
No worries, Phil. It's been great to be here. I really appreciate the time.
My thanks to Sam for being my guest on today's show. You can find full show notes on the website at itcareerenergizer.com/E75. In the next episode, I'll be talking with Mitchell Hashimoto, who is a passionate engineer, public speaker, and founder of HashiCorp. You can get next week's episode and other future episodes automatically downloaded and available to play by simply subscribing to the podcast in iTunes, Stitcher, or whichever streaming service you're using to listen. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're not growing your career, you're slowing your career. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.